Welcome to the Wake Before the Day podcast with my parents, Clark and Bobby. We're excited to talk about the Bible and the Holy Spirit adventures. Thanks for listening.
Hey, what's up, friends and family? Welcome back to the studio. Wake Before the Day podcast is here, and we are continuing our journey through Exodus. And last episode, we started breaking down the plagues. When you think of the book of Exodus, the plagues are one of the features that makes this book stand apart from other ones. And today we get to begin talking about the plague with the frogs. Bobby, you've watched a number of Wildcrats with our kids. How can you tell the difference between a frog and a toad?
I don't need Wildcrats for this.
Question.
Just let that be known.
My farm girl.
When you grow up somewhere where there's actually
wildlife,
toads and frogs, then you can see in real life that they are not the same.
What's the difference?
I mean, there probably are specific things in categories, but per my observation, frogs are long and slimy and live in like water and have like wet inhabitants. Toads are rough and bumpy and they like dry places. Also, I think that is a thing that I think that might be a distinction actually, is that the back legs of frogs are much, much, much longer than the back legs of toads.
And toads are like normally more gray and brown. Frogs are normally greener.
Green, yes. I think that sounds right. Because I have held in my hand toads. I've only held in my hand, I think, like one or two frogs in my life. You want
to hear something crazy?
No.
When I was in middle school at my youth group, the theme of this year was Fear Factor. You remember that show?
I do.
I don't know if that's Joe Rogan that like actually was that who ran that show years ago. So that was the theme of youth group. And on our retreat, one of the things we had to do is it's a retreat. It's epic competitions. Your group versus everybody else's group. Yeah. They had to nominate a person from your group. I got nominated, went on stage, and we had to get a frog and put it in our mouth.
No.
A real frog.
Did you do this? You did it.
The prince, yes.
And then what?
You had to keep it as long as you could in your mouth. But they told you can't squeeze it or it will pee. So everyone's like got this frog in their mouth like, ugh, with its legs sticking out, trying not to put pressure on it. And whoever kept in the longest, like, won.
Wow.
Yours truly won.
No, you did not.
And you kissed me.
That's so disgusting.
That's right. I know, right? It was years ago. But frogs. As I read this, I was thinking about, I have not had a lot of interaction with frogs. But my farm girl has here.
I know.
So you can tell us the difference between
frogs,
these
creatures,
and toads. And so what's happening here is, again, God is making an all-out assault against Egypt and really the lowercase g gods, goddesses. I would use the word demons. And saying, like, I'm better than you, I'm tougher than you, I'm the one true God.
Yeah. And
so frogs are everywhere. They've left the Nile. Creation is unraveling. It's chaos.
It is. I mean, I can't imagine.
Yeah.
I mean,
just disgusting.
Quick story, another thing. One time on a trip back to the Midwest, do you remember this? Your parents had like some, like, it's like a little tiny pond that will fill up when they get a lot of rain, and there was this like dreadful loud noise one night, and our kids are like,
out in, like,
what
the horse
is that? Like, you
thing?
can't see it, but we hear something, and it was a bullfrog doing like
come on, give us a bullfrog sound. What does it sound like?
I don't know what it is, but it's way louder than that. And it's like, our kids are like, what? There's something in the darkness over there. We can't, but we hear it really. And we're like, it's a frog. And I think it was a really big one.
So you can imagine what Egypt sounded like, miserable, smelled like. Ugh.
It's so true.
So what's happening here, though, is just a little more background. The goddess, the god of Egypt, is Heket. That is like a frog deity that was supposed to bring fruitfulness to Egypt. And so again, everything flowed from the Nile. And so here God is basically saying, I'm in control of this. This thing is not all powerful. It is not that strong compared to Yahweh. And you don't need to make sacrifices to the frog god Heket because I'm stronger than him.
Exactly.
So do you want to read like verses 8 through like 15? I think that's where the interaction between Pharaoh, Moses, and Aaron kind of picks up.
Yes. Let's do that together. This is the NIV version, starting in chapter 8, verse 8. Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and said, "Pray to the Lord to take the frogs away from me and my people, and I will let your people go to offer sacrifices to the Lord." Moses said to Pharaoh, "I leave to you the honor of setting the time for me to pray for you and your officials and your people, that you and your houses may be rid of the frogs, except for those that remain in the Nile. Tomorrow, Pharaoh said. Moses replied, it's so curious. Why would you say like right now?
Yes.
Yeah, it will be as easy as you say, so that you may know there is no one like the Lord our God. The frogs will leave you and your houses, your officials and your people. They will remain only in the Nile. After Moses and Aaron left Pharaoh, Moses cried out to the Lord about the frogs he had brought on Pharaoh. And the Lord did what Moses asked. The frogs died in the houses, in the courtyards, and in the fields. They were piled into heaps, and the land reeked of them. But when Pharaoh saw that there was relief, he hardened his heart, and he would not listen to Moses and Aaron, just as the Lord had said.
That's fascinating, because what Egypt has believed and really tried to live out is that this Nile god and goddess, this frog god and goddess, leads to real flourishing in life. Right. And here God's saying, no, it's not. This is not real fruitfulness. This is not real flourishing. Egypt is powerful, but it's powerful at the expense of another race of people.
Yeah.
So God is again showing it. I remember there's a pastor and author named Paul David Tripp. Highly recommend his books, his sermons, godly man. But he talks about this false illusion of fruitfulness where we can appear to like be joyful or whatever, and really it's shallow and empty. He uses this analogy, and he says, imagine like there's a husband and wife. They get married, and the wife basically tells him, I want you to do this for me. I want you to go in the backyard, and I really want an apple tree. So naturally, we would know, well, we have to go buy an apple tree, plant the apple tree, wait years for the apple tree to grow, and cultivate like real, genuine apples, real fruit. But the lady's impatient. She's like, no, I want you to go out, and I want you to make this an apple tree for me today. And so she gives the husband a hammer, a bunch of nails, a ladder, and a bushel of apples. And she goes, go make it an apple tree. And so he puts the ladder up, he puts the nail to the hammer, and he nails apples to the apple tree. And he goes to his wife and goes, look, honey, here is your apple tree. I mean, to the look at you initially, you're like, yeah, there's apples that seemingly are attached to this tree, but after probably a day or two, the apples are going to rot. They're going to fall off because it's not truly cultivated from within the DNA of the tree. It's a false fruitfulness. It's not real. It's not really flourishing. Oftentimes, Egypt, even though there was a lengthy period of time, like years, where they were in power, it wasn't real fruitfulness. It was, again, at the expense of other people. Only God can give you real fruitfulness, and only God is the one who's in control of these things.
Right.
So sure, someone might be like wealthy or powerful or have influence, but that doesn't mean it's from God or is of the kingdom. So here, God's basically unraveling creation again, going, all right, you think this Heket god of frogs is going to lead you to life? Let me show you otherwise. It's not happening.
Right.
So the other thing that's interesting, if you look at verse 15, there's pain, there's trial, there's inconvenience, and Pharaoh gets to the point where he's like, okay, I'll let you go. And I think that like pain, tragedy, inconvenience has a way of doing that to us.
Yeah.
Where it kind of reorients us back to God and realizes like we're not in control.
Right. Well, we live in the same disillusionment, and I'll speak for myself. You listening, I'm sure, have your own times and moments in life where you can look back and think, oh yeah, that really like shook a foundation, or that was a time where there was pain or suffering, or there were just questions or doubt or whatever it might be. And I think that's where, we've talked about this many times on the podcast, where we can turn to the Lord or we can turn away from the Lord.
Yeah.
And so here, it's interesting too, because even Pharaoh, he's saying like the Lord, like he's the name of the Lord is already out on display. Moses and Aaron, they've already done, a lot of the talking, the introductions have been made. And so Pharaoh's like, okay, like something is happening with this, whoever, this God is. Obviously his heart's going to be hard, but something's happening. And so then you get to verse 15, and just like, sometimes when we're in those places where things are in routine and, we're feeling good and we've got these good gifts of God that we start to, focus on and worship instead of the gift giver. And then it's like, no, we're back to that disillusionment of control again. Jesus actually talks about this when he's talking about the fig tree, when he's talking about the temple, and he says like, this isn't how things should be. This isn't how things should be operating. And so Moses and Aaron know that. And then it's curious though, because they've not only has Pharaoh and the Egyptian people been under just this assumption that like life's good because they're in power, but I would say there's also another cloak going on, this cloak of darkness because of these demonic kind of lowercase g gods. And the magicians now are about to realize like this, we can't keep up. Like as you read and you get down to verses like 16 through 19, what happens is the magicians realize we are inferior as you keep reading. And so do you want to read, or you want me to
read?
Yeah,
I'll read verses 16.
Okay.
It says, Then the Lord said to Moses, Tell Aaron, stretch out your staff and strike the dust of the ground. Throughout the land of Egypt, the dust will become gnats. They did this, and Aaron stretched out his hand with the staff and struck the dust of the ground. Gnats came on the people and animals. All the dust throughout the land of Egypt became gnats. But when the magicians tried to produce gnats by their secret arts, they could not. Since the gnats were on people and animals everywhere, the magician said to Pharaoh, This is the finger of God. But Pharaoh's heart was hard, and he would not listen, just as the Lord had said.
And so what's curious is, so not only do we have just people in their own lives, being really aloof and not attuned to what's going on, but then we also have in the spirit realm this just belief that, hey, if we offer these things, if we we use the word covenant in the Bible. If we make agreements with these beings or things, then we'll be able to walk in this type of power. And maybe that will work for an amount of time. But we know, as you continue to flip through the pages of Scripture, that God continues to show himself all the way to the cross, all the way. He makes a spectacle of death. That's what 2 Corinthians says. He puts it on display on the cross, and then he resurrects. And so we know that even when things, there could be sleight of hand going on. So even when there's a distraction, or there could be some kind of demonic power that's here, even when those things are going on, they're not going to last. They're not eternal. They cost you something. Even though it looks like they're going to give you everything, they're going to cost you everything. And we're going to see that as that plays out.
For sure. And so again, what happens here is life gets comfortable.
Yeah.
Pharaoh's heart is hardened again.
Yeah.
And then they're like, hey, I don't need you, God, because my life's comfortable.
Exactly.
God says, fine, here's more plagues. So then there's the gnats. If you look at the third and fourth plagues as you keep going, it's flies and gnats. And flies and gnats, if you think about it, they're just annoying. They ruin, they don't really cause a lot of problems unless they come and eat your crops, right? But when it comes to us in life, you think about flies and gnats, just annoying. So as Egypt has this image of comfort and wealth, prosperity, flies and gnats are annoying.
Yes.
They make your comfort less comfortable. They ruin your moments of leisure. It just is annoying.
Yes.
And so again, they're like, what is going on here? And we have to get this out. And so when you go down to verse 28, Moses and Pharaoh have been going back and forth again, and it gets to a point where pain, tragedy, and inconvenience oftentimes bring us to God. And in verse 28, Pharaoh said, I will let you go again. Please just go offer sacrifices to the Lord your God in the wilderness. But you must not go very far. Now, please pray for me. Wow.
Right.
how interesting is that? For times get tough, people go to God. But then after they're about to go, his heart's hardened again.
Yeah.
And here God's using flies and gnats to just simply bring an annoyance to the most powerful man in the world. For Father's Day, I gifted myself an amazing fly swatter. It's an electrical fly swatter. You charge this thing, it is awesome. So if you're looking for a fun gift, you charge this thing, you click a button, and you zap, you just swing like a tennis racket.
Yes,
you zap
you
these
do.
things. They needed them in Egypt. They didn't have them back then. But I got it now. Called the Excalibur.
I will say, I feel like there should be an age limit. So if you have small children around,
Me and the kids,
keep them up high.
the kids turned the electricity on. We touched it the other day. It doesn't hurt that bad. You're good.
It's still keep it up high. It's for adults.
That's
only.
right. Well, hey, as we're wrapping up just chapter 8, one word of encouragement and kind of translating this to our cultural moment. Like Pharaoh, oftentimes when times get tough, we can quickly go, God, I need help.
Sure.
And I'll repent and I'll follow you. Forgive me for what I've done. And then it's when those times of respite come and we get comfortable and life is good, we quickly forget about God and we just go back to our old ways. I want to encourage you, just follow the Lord. Start your day in his word. Stay close to the Lord in Christian community. Weekly worship. These are the reminders and the things put in place, the vehicles God has given us to reorient us back to him, remind us of his presence, remind us of his gospel, his true story. And even in times of comfort, worship. Ask God where you can step in and follow him and participate in what he's doing. Like Bobby Jean has said before, we got to hitch our wagons to other people who are in times of suffering. That kind of keeps us grounded in these good moments when life is going well for us. I just don't want to be like Pharaoh and be like, I'm only going to go to God and ask for help when times get hard.
Yeah.
And then when God brings relief, I forget you, I'm going to go do my own thing.
Right.
I've got to stay close to the Lord in a relationship with him.
It's a good word. I think that's one of those things too that resonates because any of us could say that we've done that. And so this is a word of grace. This isn't a word of condemnation. It's a word of grace saying, and now we can walk differently. Because not only does God remain unchanged in our changing circumstance and in our really fluid nature, but he actually comes toward us. So much so that Jesus came to earth so that we could know him, believe in him, give ourselves. And so I think that's one of those reminders too, that God's omnipresence, that he's always around, doesn't negate like our need to be aware and ask for his coming in these moments. And so that's one of those things like, maybe you have come and really cried out to God in a time of hardship and turned away. Keep coming. Keep coming in the hardship. Keep coming, and in the easy things, keep coming, because the truth of it is that we want our walk and our gaze to be on Him always, and He's not turning away. So we're grateful for that.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us for Exodus 8. You know what I'm about to say. Exodus 9 coming your way tomorrow. God bless you, and we'll see you then.
The Lord bless you and keep you. Don't make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face towards you and give him his peace. Have a great day.